Hello, I'm Dave, and if you enjoyed the Ocarina of Time with lyrics song that me and brentalfloss made, then I've got something here that you're also probably going to enjoy. After our first song together, Super Mario Land with lyrics, was a success for both of us, we decided pretty early on that we wanted to do another one, but it was going to be bigger. Now, the way that we set up this first song was that we had one of us loving Super Mario Land and the other one hating Super Mario Land. And we thought that this would be fair, because it would cover both sides of the argument, if such an argument exists. But what we weren't quite expecting was that what most people really wanted to know was where the truth of it lay. To what extent did I love Mario Land, and to what extent did Brent hate it? Well, as we were planning the new song, the Ocarina of Time one, we realised that, well, because the song and the scale of it was going to be bigger, then the exaggeration of our opinions had to be bigger as well. We were going to present both ends of the fanboy spectrum, with one of us loathing Ocarina of Time, and the other one loving Ocarina of Time. And it occurred to us that until we'd answered the questions of, like, to what extent are these personas actually based on our real feelings and thoughts on these games, well then, someone watching the video might well think that what they were watching was two people with really extreme and quite unreasonable opinions about something that really ought to be frivolous, especially if they didn't watch all the way to the end of the video. But mainly we thought, look, if people want to know the truth about how we feel about these games, well then they deserve those answers. So my idea was this. Actually, hold on. If you haven't yet watched the Ocarina of Time with lyrics song, then now's the time to do it, because these videos that you're about to see aren't going to make sense until you've seen this, because they're behind the scenes stuff about this video. But also, they will, and I'm about to, spoil a rather nice surprise that happens in this video. So if you haven't seen it yet, now is the time to pause watching this and click here. There you go, click on that, and you can go and watch Ocarina of Time with lyrics. Okay? Okay, you done that? Okay, my idea was, I thought we ought to sit down and talk to camera about what our real feelings about all of this stuff really were. So what you're about to see is a long and rambling and winding and more or less unedited conversation that me and brentalfloss had in the middle of the night. We're very sleepy, we're kind of, our energy is drained, and for that reason there are a lot of cuts in it, but I haven't really edited stuff out of the conversation. I've just edited well, let me give you an example. Here's what one of the typical bits that I've edited out goes like. So you can see why I cut those moments out, to try and condense the conversation down to something watchable. But it's still really long, so I'm cutting it into two halves, but I hope you'll agree that my decision to include all of that, instead of trying to edit it down to 20 minutes or something like that, is like a good thing. Here then is a sleepy conversation between me and brentalfloss in the middle of the night, just a very short time after we finished filming Ocarina of Time with lyrics. Enjoy. Hello, I'm Dave.
I'm Brent.
And it is the evening, as you can tell from this drastic change of lighting from what you usually see in this room. And Brent's here as well. That's a different drastic change.
New piece of furniture.
We are currently behind the scenes. Here we are behind them. They're the same as the front of them.
Right.
We are here to finally put to bed some questions that people have been asking us for a long... When did we put that first video up?
Well, Super Mario Land was, I believe, October or November of 2012. So about 2 years ago. And that's at the time of shooting. By the time they see this, it'll probably be over 2 years.
Oh, yeah. It is, in fact, September, early September.
Right.
And we've been filming, as you know, as you well know. Because if you've watched this and you haven't watched the video that this is the behind-the-scenes, like, addendum to, then off you go. It's there. Yeah. There it is.
Oh, wow.
Give me the other side of the link.
Oh, right. Go check it out. It's right in here.
It's there.
Yeah.
We're going to be answering some questions that a lot of people have been asking us, or rather we're going to be chatting around them, because the specific topic is, do you really hate Super Mario Land, love Super Mario Land, hate Mario Sunshine, and of course now Ocarina of Time?
Right.
So we're gonna give you the actual... Well, I was going to say we'll give you the actual answer, but that's a big topic, isn't it? What we're going to do is chat about it, and then another day, having forgotten what we said today, we'll probably give you a completely different answer.
But this is how we feel today.
Today?
September 2014.
Yeah.
So you and I have both been asked quite a bit.
Yes, over and over again. And quite reasonably, because we did a... Not inflammatory, but inflammatory if that's the way you lean.
A controversial one way or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, because these are what we've done is we've taken things that people feel deeply about, including us, and that's why we took them. And we've essentially put ourselves in like the pro camp and the anti camp.
Right.
Unsubtle opinions like that are rare. Usually there is nuance to it, as is true in this case.
Right. It is, though, I would say, difficult to sing with somebody else
Yes.
to the tune of a game.
Yes.
About the subtleties.
Yes.
I mean, it does behoove a song with two people to add some kind of conflict, some kind of story. Otherwise, I mean, we could have just done a song celebrating a game or trashing a game.
Which is what I was initially going to do.
That's right. How did that come about?
Well,
before we tell them what we really think, how did it come about?
Okay, well, if you've watched the making of, the behind the scenes of the Super Mario Land video, you'll know some of this, so I'll try and be brief, but you contacted me saying we're going to do this song, and I misunderstood the brief. I thought it was going to be, let's sing about our fondness for a game. So that's what I thought it was going to be, and that was, and I wrote a draft that was like that. I think you didn't expect that I would just be like, this is a good game, and I really like it.
Right, because my draft I'd made was more trashing it. Even if it wasn't all trashing it, it was more taking the piss out of.
Yeah, you were in your typical American gamer way, you were assuming that Super Mario Brothers on the NES is more or less the be-all and end-all, and that any deviation from that is unusual. And whereas I was just excited that such a thing could then be put into a hand.
Right.
In back then, not so much now. I mean, and so that was so we came at it from very different angles, and from that real life misunderstanding-y conflict came the imagined conflict. So, but anyway, real talk now. Mario Land. Do I love Mario Land? Do you hate Mario Land? Let's start with hate, because that's such a thing you can grasp. So, tell me about Mario Land. What's your actual experience with it? And
oh, I remember playing it, and I don't think I hated it when I first played it.
Do you remember the concept first appearing in your life? Like, do you remember hearing about it, or? Yeah,
well, I mean, there was a hardware store that also had a small electronics section called Gibson's. Let Grandpa tell you all about it, right? So, I remember going there with my dad. He probably literally needed nuts and bolts. He was like a handyman type. And in the back, in the electronics section, they had an ad for the forthcoming Game Boy.
Oh my god.
And, you know, like,
I don't remember a time before Game Boy, really. I don't remember it coming and being a thing.
I would have been 5. Yeah. And I didn't quite understand it, but it seemed so cool. And then I saw a TV ad, and I was like, oh, what?
Yeah.
But when I played, I think I played Mario Land on somebody else's Game Boy first, because we just got it with Tetris. That's what everybody got it with.
Yeah.
And
by the way, if I'm doing any of this, and if Brent is as well, it's late. And we have had a very busy week.
Yeah, and I'm unapologetically having a beer, because we just basically videoed for 48 hours.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty much. So, anyway.
So basically, I think I played it on somebody else's Game Boy. And I was initially excited about the idea of, oh, this is like my Mario game on, in my hands. So I remember thinking, fairly early in my experience with it, this kind of looks like an ugly little Mario. I don't know why. And of course I was very literal and very, color inside the lines as a young kid. So the idea that they didn't just replicate all the mechanics of Mario on the NES, or one of the beloved, 1, 2, or 3 wasn't out yet, but Mario 1 or our Super Mario Brothers 2 in the States, the fact that they didn't just replicate that and that they had new weird mechanics was weird to me, even though I fully accepted Super Mario Brothers 2. I don't know why, but I didn't like a lot of the things. I didn't like how the fireballs bounced, and it was just me not being able to accept change. Much like if you're a Facebook user, they change the layout and you're like, man, I don't like this, and then after a week you don't care. That was it. But I remember feeling like it was a knockoff, kind of didn't feel quite like Mario. Even though I played it, I enjoyed it fine, but it seemed like, why did they arbitrarily have exploding turtles? That was never part of the thing. So my problems with it really were kind of this color inside the lines, literal, you're breaking the rules of a franchise that's 2 games old at that point.
So you had that, and I guess if you're 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, you would have had that thing where, I wish they'd just done it colour. I wish they'd just made it exactly the same thing without realising you can't.
Of course. That was before my phase where I was fascinated with the power differences between NES and Game Boy, which I would call not the Nintendo tip hotline, but the free one, where you could talk to a Nintendo counselor for free, and it was usually just asking...
Nintendo counselor?
There's I might be mixing up the word tip counselor with something else, but there was a free 800 number.
Wow.
Where you could call
This sounds like if you were affected by any of the issues in Super Mario Brothers 2. If you're
I think it was
a
intended
parsnip with a face.
I think it was. I do remember though that I loved the music. At least I loved. Actually, that's not fair. I loved the one. Bam, bam, bam. There was one like.
You didn't like level 2?
Well, it was okay. It was okay, but it never got me like that.
Yeah.
And they also had the dun 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 dun, like. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, like a parody of the Mario tune.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
Why? It's like, why not just...
See, I thought it was a parody. I was like, oh, brilliant! It's like a reference. Do 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 do.
And see how that would lead me to this idea that it was almost a knockoff.
Some kind of Mario knockoff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Such a similar tune, but
yeah.
arbitrarily different. But I didn't like deeply hate it. I just walked away from it going, this is not my Mario. This is not my favorite. This is far from my favorite, and ultimately really knowing that it's about limitations of the hardware and that they were just seeing what they could pull off in a Mario idiom on a handheld, but the end product disappointed me. Not deeply, but it just wasn't one of my favorites, and it was forgettable to me.
Well, okay, so my experience with it was that, I'm trying to think back to when I would have first known about it. What came first? The remix? Or playing it on my friend's Game Boy? Must have been my friend's Game Boy. It must have been. I was not one of those children who can ask for a games console and be given it. Just like that. I don't even know if it would have been on the cards. If I'd have said, oh, I'd like a Game Boy for Christmas, I don't know if I would have got one or not. I was trained well. The implication was that something like that was so big that it would be a years-long campaign. So I was interested, and I was a fan, and I would read about these things, but I didn't engage with, like, now I want that console, now I want that console. So, I didn't get my Super Nintendo until 1996.
All right.
Yeah. And what a Christmas it was!
Oh, sure.
All the games were right there.
That would have been one. It would almost be like getting a PS3 now. It would be like, oh my god!
That was exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Which incidentally is what we did. We got one for Christmas this year.
Well done. But it's a pretty good model, actually.
Yeah.
If you don't care about being current with the news and stuff, just get it when it's in its later years, and there's a huge library of games. That's a great plan.
Exactly. Yeah. If you can be patient enough, it's a great way to be. So I was interested, and I was just inherently interested because there's my line in the song.
Way back in the day, all you had were 3-frame LCD games.
That was not an idle line. Like, I was into LCD games, and I knew them, and I had a few of them, and there was I nearly said cousins, but not cousins, but sort of family members who I remember coming round once with just loads of these different LCD games of different kinds.
Which, small sidebar, when I asked Dave to do a track for my fake-out leaked version of my second album, he actually created a cappella arrangements of music, most of it obviously poorly constructed or composed music and or sound effects from a variety of handheld LCD games I'd never played.
Yeah. You know the one that's like down, do down, do down, down, do down. That was one of the ones they brought. These family members. Yeah. And I just listened to this tune and was like, all throughout there, I was like, can we put BMX Racer on again? I want to know the tune. I want to remember the tune. And after a while, they were like, it goes. Dun, 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 dun. I was like, no, I want to play it! But anyway, so I was into LCD games, and the Game Boy represented like the zenith of that. It was, LCD games, well, imagine if it was ridiculous.
Right.
And so I was excited by that, and Mario was on it. And as I gradually became aware that was an amazing thing, because I grew up it wasn't as well advertised here as in America by any stretch, and so I had Mario Brothers, the original Mario Brothers, but I had the Spectrum version of that, ZX Spectrum. Again, I've been telling Brett all about ZX Spectrum.
They ported Mario Brothers. Wait, you're talking about
not Super Mario Brothers.
You're talking about the arcade Mario Brothers that would have resurfaced in Mario 3 as a mini game.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a company called Ocean who did a lot of games on the Spectrum, did that.
And this is a computer-based console?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will show you. So I'm now showing Brent footage of Mario Brothers for the ZX Spectrum. And this was, I remember...
Oh.
It doesn't look much like Mario and Luigi.
Oh, goodness.
But it is an official port as far as I'm aware. So anyway, yes, it existed. And I had that. And there was the cartoon on TV. And that was what I kind of knew Mario from.
Right.
And then...
Now, was that the Super Mario Brothers Super Show?
Yes. So I knew about Mario generally as a thing, like in the way I knew about Spider-Man. It was a franchise that existed in some way.
Yeah.
But then my friend eventually got his NES and we started to really get into it. And from that point, then I was interested in Super Mario Land. And around then, the Ambassadors of Funk remix single came out.
Yeah. Which I didn't know about, mind you,
No?
until you showed me. You showed me when we started talking Mario Land, but I didn't realize it had been, you said, like, kind of a hit in the UK.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was. I think it got to number 8 in the charts.
No idea. It just never got to us.
Yeah. Well,
or if it did, I was 6.
And this was at a time. It wasn't the only one. You know, you have now That's What I Call Music albums, right? Well, when that came out, the Now album of that year, which was like 27 or something like that, had the Mario Land, the Tetris remix, and a song called Mr. Wonderman, which was... Oh, wait! Actually, that might have been a different Now album, but it was around the same time, maybe the next year, which was a Sonic song by Right Said Fred. And...
What?
Yeah.
We only know Right Said Fred because
I'm Too Sexy. Yeah. Well, they did a Sonic... They did a tie-in single for Sonic 3.
What?
There was a Sonic single called Supersonic by HWA, Hedgehog with Attitude.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's so dumb. Okay. Okay.
And that just spin-dashed over the heads of the 11-year-olds who bought it.
Of course.
So I was interested in this concept, and of course, then when I played it, it was just like magic in my hands. It was, and I was into the LCD version of Super Mario Brothers, the Game & Watch, which another friend had, and that was amazing. And another friend had like an actual watch that had a Mario 3 LCD playable game on it.
Yeah.
And so this whole idea of handheld Mario was just really exciting to me. So Mario Land was like the real one of those. So to me, the knockoffs were the LCD versions.
So I see a pattern here. Like, to me, Mario Land was a downgrade from the original.
Yeah.
And to you, it was like, oh, this is what those things were trying to be, but this is really the thing.
It was the ultimate upgrade of LCD Mario.
I get it.
It was amazing to me. So that, honestly, is where I was coming from. And, you know, a lot of playing it on the bus and just... Because I got my Game Boy late, like all the other stuff. So again, there was this huge library of games that my friends were sick of that I could have off them. And Link's Awakening was the point of having it. Yeah. That was why I had to have it. I was obsessed when I saw this on a friend's. He was like, "Dave, play this. You probably like it." And I was like, "I'm holding a world." I'd never seen anything like this before in my life.
I think you were probably just a more generally appreciative child of many things, whereas I was like this sucks. Like, not with everything,
maybe.
But like, I was quicker to judge, it sounds like.
But also, right, okay, this is going to sound like a vast generalization, and I apologize to Americans watching, and I'm sure this isn't necessarily true, but I get the sense that American kids' knowledge of Nintendo was advertisement-based.
Sure.
You know, like...
Well, and Nintendo Power.
Nintendo Power,
ultimate manifestation of that.
Yeah, so like you were... Someone somewhere went, we will guide these... And let's make a benevolent person. They mean to make you happy.
Yeah.
They went, let us guide these children through by telling them about these wonderful things. We found out about them gradually, and just like someone would have one that you met, and we'd be like, oh, cool, and then not really care. There was no pressure system jabbing at you to, you care about this, you care.
Gotcha.
So we came to them more gradually and did really care about them in the same way, of course.
Right. You just maybe didn't have serials based off of them.
Oh, we didn't, exactly. Or indeed any kind of marketing canon firing the idea of cereals at us at all.
That's
another thing we were talking about this
weekend. We discussed how American kids, especially when we were both children, were subjected to much more, get this cereal, it's full of sugar, you'll love it, make your parents buy it,
Yeah.
you know. And
Whereas in the UK, cereal was either a sensible thing that was like a necessity, or it was like, hey kids, this one's got a dash of sugar on it, so it's not quite as gross as Rice Krispies with nothing on it.
And yeah, so I guess maybe Nintendo and cereal are kind of a metaphor for each other in this way, no?
Yeah.
Also, this is a beer with a lot of alcohol in it. It's if I look sleepy or seem to be out of it, I'm both. And a little buzzed. Back to cereals, Nintendo, and Mario Land.
Yeah, so Mario Land, I loved it, and then I got Mario Land 2 and thought it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But that didn't cancel out my love for the first one, which had some things in it which the Super Bowls. Yeah, that's weird. But, and I'd forgotten this until just now, you could fire a fireball down a trench of coins and it would collect the coins.
Sure.
That's cool. I don't know why they've never tried that again.
I don't know. I mean, I think that I just, as a kid, more than I am as an adult, I just passed judgment on a thing very quickly.
Yeah.
Anytime something seemed like new or like, they've ruined it. Even though I'm less like that as an adult, I mean, Final Fantasy VII offended me. Because I was like, this is not a Final Fantasy. When it came out, I was like, I just fell in love deeply with Final Fantasy IV. I mean, the most romantic affair. An old flame of mine, Final Fantasy IV. And you're gonna tell me this is a Final Fantasy?
Shut up!
I mean, it was just in the same way. The thing is, I ended up playing it recently, and it's like, oh, I kind of get it. I get why it's a beloved game, because I opened my mind to it. As a kid, my mind was not open to a different format of a thing that I thought I understood.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the Ninja Turtles movie, and this is not to sidebar it, but as a kid, I went, "Where's the Technodrome?
Yeah.
Where's Krang?
Yeah.
Where's April O'Neil in a banana-colored jumpsuit?"
Yeah.
Because I wanted it to just be the thing I already knew, and I don't know why I was like that as a kid, but you were probably a little bit more open-minded about, oh, and this is a thing too.
Well, the reason that when you said this, I was talking about advertising, is that like there was nothing telling me that everything should be the same and that things should be on brand. In like how you said, like it's weird that I got along with Mario 2. Well, maybe it was because they used it for the cover of Nintendo Power. Maybe it was because it was what the cartoon was like. It was just the idea of things being different was not unusual, and I mean to examine why that is, because another can of worms that I'll be talking about another day is that I liked the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh.
Despite, and now there are many things wrong with the Super Mario Brothers movie, but the thing that I have never accepted as a problem with it is that it's different from Super Mario Brothers. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the... No, it is. It really is.
Well, right.
And that's one of the chief complaints against it, and that's just never occurred to me to be a thing because Ninja Turtles, because this, because that, because that.
It's almost like some kids are excited by an alt universe, and some kids go, this is wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I guess, and as I say, the reason I bring up the Mario movie is that in that video I'm going to examine what it is throughout my childhood that got me ready for the idea of the thing being completely different and me not minding. But I think that's where I was for whatever reason. It just didn't concern me, and also because Super Mario, it was like there was only 2 games or 3 games, and they were totally different to each other. So now he's here. Now he's got this power up. It's like us now going, whatever the new power ups in the cat suit. It's like he didn't have one of those before.
Well, let me ask you this: does that segue us into Mario Sunshine? Speaking of variations on Mario,
because this is where everything I just said becomes lie. Just becomes totally lie. It becomes totally lie.
Maybe it would be smarter to start with our thought process behind how we describe Mario Sunshine in the song, and then extrapolate out to what we actually feel.
Yes, agreed.
So basically, I feel strange saying this because I never want my YouTube viewers, or any YouTube viewers, to think that I or any other YouTuber is like constantly doing this reality TV live version of themselves. But then again, as a musical theater writer, in terms of my roots, right? Somebody who writes songs that are clearly fiction, for me to write a sketch type song that is itself a little mini musical sort of gives me license to just be a character, even if it's a character based on myself.
And actually, in fact, I'm going to be very kind to you here, because one of the things that I found to be, I guess, a surprise, because I didn't really know you then. We talked and collaborated a little bit on a couple of things. I was surprised that when we were doing Mario Land, and again now that we're doing this, that you were like, so I'm going to be the bad guy. He was very not accepting of the idea, but like it was his idea to be an antagonist and to be like a caricature. And I didn't realise that was how this sort of thing worked. I guess I did kind of buy into that when people on YouTube are ranting, they're ranting, even if they're overblown characters.
Right, well, and I mean, it's a fine line, because you don't want to do the equivalent of, like, you know, being secretly atheist, but being like the Pope. You don't want to do that kind of chasm, but me personally, like, the brentalfloss character, especially the first few years of brentalfloss, was so much a satire of things I didn't like about myself, exaggerated to ridiculousness in this character. But frankly, I think looking back, I could have exaggerated more, so it had a little bit less realism, so people didn't go, kind of funny, kind of a prick. But no, yeah, to me, it's like, if the story's better from me being a jerk in a way that I find funny to satirize, then great. So there was clearly a conflict in the story, and we had to come to some kind of a head in the argument. And I mean, I'm trying to think of how that. I think you wrote the dialogue at first.
Yeah.
I think so, because I would never have come up with Wazik Pillock.
I did that bit, certainly, yeah. So anyway, and then in this block of dialogue, I say the good Mario games, which is all of them, except Sunshine, obviously. But I don't know if I wrote that. I bet I did, because it would not have occurred to me, and it did not occur to me until our video came out, that anyone liked Mario Sunshine. And I say this with total humble apology to everyone who loves it, because I've spoken to you now. Now I know you're there. Now I get it.
And it really must have been you, because I didn't experience enough Mario Sunshine one way or the other to have an opinion about it. Although I can elaborate later on how much I did.
Well, okay, so let's talk about what our history with Mario Sunshine was, because this will explain why I said that line. And again, goodness me, you're so nice, all of you who've said I really liked Sunshine and then have talked to me about it, and it turns out you're lovely people, and you were just at the wrong age at the wrong time.
Or perhaps the right age to like Mario Sunshine.
Oh yes, that's what I mean.
Could I have a tea cake?
Yes, you may. A tea cake, ladies and gentlemen.
Americans, these are just small Malamars, but these pretended they're tea cakes, so I'm just humoring him.
That's true. Super Mario Brothers was a wonderful game. Super Mario 2, arguably, good game. I loved it. Mario Bros. 3, brilliant. Mario World, brilliant. Yoshi's Island, brilliant. And that Christmas I got the SNES, it was the Mario pack. It came in a Mario box, Mario All-Stars with Mario World on that cartridge, and Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island.
Lucky.
Yes, it was.
Whoa.
It was a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah.
And then, and I found this out recently, I thought that there was then these two eras. You remember, like, the era before I had that game, the era after when you were a kid, right?
Right.
After enjoying those games for sufficiently long, I got up the wherewithal, I saved up my money, and I went and bought A Link to the Past. And then that was the second phase of me owning SNES.
Yeah.
The other day, I found my diary from that year. It was 5 days.
5 days, you mean?
That on Christmas Day, I had the Mario games in Yoshi's Island. 5 days later, I bought Link's Awakening. That was that whole era.
Sorry,
Link to the Past.
Yeah.
That 5 days was that entire era of my life that I thought was this epoch.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
When you're a kid, like, time is just...
Yeah. And I was like 14 as well, so I should have been beyond that.
Still, it's not... Yeah.
So anyway, all wonderful games with incredible memories attached to them. Mario 64 comes out. Now, this is an interesting one because I was enamoured of everything about it, mainly from a technical standpoint. I couldn't believe that we were in this 3D world. Oh, God, amazing. The first level, oh, my heart. Oh, loved it.
You mean the Babam, what's it called? So that one, not the castle, but like when you go...
Well, and the castle though as well, but I meant
going into
one.
the first painting,
Yeah, that whole thing was so wonderful. Now, as it went on, and this is the next confession, so you can all... This is the new thing, to be like, do you really think that about that game? Mario 64 was a bit of a chore to me. I loved it and didn't realise, but when I got to the end I was like, oh, thank goodness I've done that. You know, like, I've got those stars, I've been in those lava levels and on those water raising and lowering levels, and oh god, so there was a lot of, but I was a kid and it was a good game, and so I was happy to struggle through it. But I realised, like the tune you've had stuck in your head when you got a fever, I realised later on that like I am sick of this, but I only realised that the moment I'd finished it, so it was like great, perfect timing.
Interesting.
But I knew it was a brilliant game, and I couldn't wait for the next one to come out that was like that, but I loved it. Like, imagine if he was in a galaxy, and imagine if you were going upside down stuff. No, obviously I didn't think that, but Mario Galaxy is the game I wanted next.
Right.
That, or, you know, the technological like level that it was at the time, equivalent. Mario Sunshine is coming out. I'm a teenager, I'm at college at this point, and I am, you know, the way a university child who everything's being paid for by their parents and the state feels independent.
Right.
I felt like I was...
Simulated independence.
Yeah, I felt like I was an independent adult now, and I was saving up my loan. And...
Right, your adult allowance.
Yeah, and this game was coming out. I was following the news because I was an adult now. I was waiting for it to come out. I was reading about it. Oh, it's going to be amazing. It comes out. I'm straight there, I buy it, I get home, and I can't wait. Here's the new Mario game. And it wasn't. It was nothing to do with Mario at all.
Right.
Or at least it, well, no. And people will be going, but from the very moment it starts, the princess is there and Toad and...
Right.
What I mean is, yes, it was to do with Mario. Mario was in it. But in a Star Fox Adventures kind of way. Here was a game, this perfectly good idea for a game, this water clearing away stuff with game, and that's how they pitched it, I think.
Yeah.
Mario 64, there had been a moment of disappointment when I realised, hang on, there's no point waiting, I am really never going to find a mushroom that makes me bigger. I am not going to be bashing blocks with my head.
Right.
There are blocks that you bash and a mushroom comes out or something, but like it's not the same thing. Hitting some coins and some bricks and coins come out. Pipes to go down. Okay, they were in it, but different, right?
Right.
It was not the same thing in 3D. It was a new thing with some of the decoration from Super Mario Brothers. And if it hadn't been such a good game, that would have made me cross at it, because it was like appropriation of the thing I wanted in order to sell me this different thing. Which, luckily, it was good, so I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
But Mario Sunshine didn't have the reason that Mario 64 was so good, which was that, oh, now we're in 3D. That amazement at what they had achieved, plus the fact that the character controlled nicely.
Yeah. Well, and I found the Sunshine controls, it's not that they were hard, it's that they were just, if you've cut to me just now, Dave's just gone for a drink, but the 64 controller was a huge leap away from the Super Nintendo. I loved the 64 controller. For me, the GameCube controller was a bridge too far.
Oh, really?
You and I have argued about this before.
Yeah, I love, for the record, the GameCube controller, the day I first put it in my hands, it was the first time I felt a controller that melded into your skin and just loved it.
Yeah, I'd like my skin to be separate. Thank you. I found the asymmetry of it worse than the asymmetry of the 64 controller. But while Dave's up, I'm gonna say my entire experience with Mario Sunshine, when we wrote Mario Land with lyrics, was as follows. I watched a friend in college play it for about 5 minutes and decided I didn't care for it very much. Now, slight backstory, I had become a PC gamer in late high school and was still a PC gamer through college. Like, I'd left the 64 was my last console that I had until the Wii. So I completely missed the GameCube generation, and even though I was aware of games in it, it just wasn't exciting to me because I was playing Deus Ex and Half-Life and Thief and all these things that seemed like console games, especially 64 games, were just kid stuff. Now that I had this cool PC stuff, you know, like these amazing graphics and like fluid frame rates. So anyway, I just saw this thing and I noticed my friend. I didn't like the fact that you could move through the entire game on Mario's belly, and that meant that if you were watching...
That's the one thing I liked about it.
Well, if you were watching the game, that
like
meant
a fish
the entire game is hoo, 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 ha, hoo,
true.
hoo, 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 ha. And I was just like, really? And because I loved 64 myself.
Yeah.
So that plus the fact that some friends of mine covered the Isle Delfino theme, the friends being the one-ups. And I loved that tune, great tune, but I just wrote it off from many people saying it was kind of the black sheep, kind of not that great. From the little I'd seen, I extrapolated, nobody likes that game, it's a tragic black sheep. But contrasting with that, when we did Mario Land with lyrics, and my line was, but Super Mario Sunshine's like the best one. Again, I was happy to take that position because I didn't feel like in song, or even in musical sketch, I was obligated to be completely representative of my real self, because my real self rarely gets on Skype and sings a whole song. And ends up doing...
It happens, but...
Yeah, but you don't end up doing the can-can at the end, and harmony's very tough. I didn't have an opinion really one way or the other, personally, so I was fine to, you know, lie, but really just dramatize a thing that happens when two people argue. Which is, you know, disagreeing, and it seemed like if I disagreed with him diametrically at that point, things would somehow come to a head, and they did with him calling me British mean words.
My confession, by the way, about Mario Sunshine is that while I agree that tune is a good tune, you may have found this when you played it recently.
Oh yeah, that addendum, I did play it recently all the way through last year.
All the way through?
Well, okay. All the way to the hot tub boss battle, and then
all the way through within
forget
reason.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you may have found what I found, which is that by that time, you never want to hear that song again.
I still like the song.
Yeah?
But I will say, it's so strange that, I mean, I understand why they do this, but the song sounds zippy and fun, and yet the first half of the game, the island looks like it's in the middle of a hurricane.
Yeah.
Like, it looks depressing, and at first I didn't actually understand that. It was like, what happened? It looks so, like, washed out and gross. But then I was like, oh, the shine sprites, I get it. But the whole time, it's not, it's almost like it would have been cool if they'd made it like, dum, 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 dum,
it would have been brilliant.
Dum. Like, things are sad here, right?
Yes.
Dum, 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 boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. You know, like, and then by the end, when you're kicking ass and you're like, you've got most of the shine sprites, but like, it was zippy from the top, and I was like, But I didn't get sick of that song. To me, the main problem, and you said something like this earlier, was a good Mario game should feel like it wouldn't be complete without Mario. Mario must be the protagonist of it. And this game felt, and I elucidated this in my
song
with lyrics song. I like how I used a big word and then completely brain farted. I said this in my with lyrics that it felt like they took a game that could have just been about a tropical janitor cleaning things up wherever he goes, and they went, right, well, you know, what if this is our next Mario game? Like, they didn't build it around Mario. So
you know what else feels like that?
What?
The movie.
That's well said. Well said. Yeah, because except for Big Bertha, the one and the little bob-omb with the Reebok on the bottom.
And the Thwomps and Toad and his head. There's a lot of them, but they're hidden.
Thwomps?
The boots are called Thwomp Stompers. They are designed with Thwomp teeth all the way around the edges. And if you look on the underside, there are Thwomps etched into them. And the only way that anyone knows that is because the people from SMBmovie.com bought the props.
That's cute, but the movie sucked. Anyway, so...
But the point is, you're right. While there are, I can find more than most people know about references to Mario in that movie, generally speaking, it was just a film which they could have been called Frank and Steve, and it would have been the same film.
Sure.
and it didn't have to have Mario.
I'm not going to get roped into a conversation about that movie because we'll be here for 8 more hours. But
We will.
He'll do his own later, and then I'll just be like.
No, but I'm saying you're right. It was like that, and there's even a train of thought that says that is actually what happened. That there was this other film into which the Mario franchise was dropped. So I don't know if that's true or not. I suspect it isn't because I've seen some of the earlier versions and how it. But anyway. That's what Mario Sunshine does feel like. It kind of is, like I say, like the Star Fox Adventures of Mario, where if it had had Fox as the character, it would have been the same game. Whatever happened.
And Yoshi could have just been one of those freaking dinosaurs from Star Fox Adventures.
And then, I never even thought about it this far. Bowser Jr. shows up. And this was a confusing moment for those of us who've been around for a while, because as we know, Bowser Jr. is in fact Bowser. That's who Bowser Jr. was. It was Bowser in the past. Suddenly that same character from Yoshi's Island appears. And by the way, yes, it comes out of my mouth as Yoshi. Something about my school, we said Yoshi's Island, sorry. Anyway, in this, he's a separate character, and there's this whole story about how, Bowser has convinced him that Peach is his mother. And it's that makes more sense if it wasn't originally Mario characters. And they just shoehorned them in.
Right, that's the thing, they never, Bowser Koopa, has a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Where are they?
And what's more, the Koopa kids, something about their colour palette would have worked really well in that game.
Sure. The neons, the pinks, the nice, colourful blues and greens, absolutely.
The fact that Bowser Jr. was misunderstood was not misunderstood, they changed it, that's fine, they can do that. But the fact that they did it then, and the fact that they did it in this game, in that way, felt like someone else being handed the property and going, okay, we need a child character. Well, there's one, a small Koopa, there, we'll have that.
Right.
But
they didn't even go to the trouble to be you are my newest child, and you are special for some reason, and that is why you are on this adventure. Instead, they give Bowser this weird Cookie Monster voice. The first time they give him voice acting, he's like, "Hey son, how's it going? I'm the bad guy." And you're like, no! So I'm playing it as an adult. I played it at the age of 29, and that's not a great age to play Mario Sunshine, but I found it, well, you know what? Unlike my Mario Land and Ocarina of Time opinions, probably the least warped version of my opinion about Mario Sunshine can be found in my lyrics video. I see what's good about it, but my opinion is it's just not a great Mario for the reasons I elucidate there.
Yeah, now, and I've been bashing it a lot as well, and I just want to sort of make it clear that the things people have been saying as to why they loved it, I agree with all of them, including the most regularly used one, which is I was 9, or I was 12, or whatever. Great, that. Or it was my first Mario. I understand that.
And your first anything, your first Mario, your first Zelda, your first Final Fantasy, they're like the first thing, they're your home base, and so of course they seem good, because you are young, and I'm guilty of this too.
Yes,
absolutely. Super Mario...
And it's good as well. Great, you may have that wonderful time and that wonderful memory.
Yeah, if your main question, and if you're still sticking with us on this ramble, if your main question was, what are your true feelings, and if your feelings weren't what you said, then why? I think what you're going to start to notice is that between the two of us, a willingness to slightly bend, exaggerate, or mute our real opinions in favor of making a fun little sketch about a thing, as long as they're not so antithetical to our true opinions. But I didn't, hate Mario Sunshine. I just knew this much, and the this much I knew I didn't really like, even though I liked the music. So I was willing to hop on that train for the sake of disagreeing with Dave. And I was willing to exaggerate my Mario Land hatred for the sake of, this is a more fun video to watch than a polite, I liked it too.
And
the end.
Similarly, to a lesser extent, but I also exaggerated my love for the game. It's I think it's alright. I wouldn't play it now, except for nostalgia, and even then I'd probably play it for half a level and then done. And I think this is why my verses in the song were more about the technical specifications and the fact that suddenly now we had games to play in our hands, as opposed to really saying much about the game itself. But that's because, to me, Mario Land is like Tetris to me. It's it is the Game Boy, and the Game Boy is Mario Land, and like, because yeah, Tetris, but you could do that on anything.
Sure.
And they did. Whereas
Yeah.
with Mario Land, that to me was the first, like, here's what a Game Boy can do. It can do Mario. Oh, sold. So that's why I talked about the Game Boy almost more than I talked about the
Yeah.
Game Boy.
So moving on to
Yeah.
Ocarina.
So here we are. We
Yeah.
have come all the way around to finally talking about this. We got a lot of, lots of people saying, like, you should do a sequel to Mario Land, and you should do Mario Land 2, or what were the other games they said? It's Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, I didn't. The only real requests that I remember seeing were Mario Land 2, which, because we mentioned it in the song, I had thought about, but I think we pretty quickly came to the idea
We
that...
thought about it, didn't we?
We did, but the thing is, we both kind of love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that, like, again, we don't, I don't think almost ever, take a strong opinion we hold and pretend to reverse it. But if we have no opinion, like, or maybe I'm looping you in unfairly. If I have no opinion, I'm fine to pretend I do for the sake of an argument.
Well, for the sake of
or rather a dramatic.
yeah,
sketch,
it's the fact. The fact is that these are songs, and kind of sketches. And look, we've probably got this across to you already, but we approached it like a number from a musical,
Or even its own little mini musical, like its own beginning, middle, and end.
I can't think of a time when either of us would do what appears to be just a talk to camera and be playing a character then, unless it was, if we thought of a character, perhaps we would, but you'd know.
Sure.
When you're just vlogging, as it were.
Yeah.
You're far more inclined to be honest. You edit yourself, but that's not lying.
I think that you're presenting a version of yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes vloggers, I think, present something a little bit closer to who they'd like to be, but I don't think you outright lie.
That's like we tidied the flat before you came round. It's the same thing as that.
And you and I constantly cleaned out corners of, like, when we were like, oh, we're shooting over here now, get the clutter out. Because you don't want it to be about that. I don't think either of us would outright lie.
God, no. No, and it's... it hurts to even go off, like, what your opinion is.
But sometimes for the sake of entertaining your audience.
Yeah, if it's a joke, if it's a sketch,
Right.
if it's a... how many people tell a joke that's, like, ruder than they would really be, and they go, ah, not really. And it's that, we're sort of... The not really is the fact that it's a song.
Right.
And the thing that's... And, hello. I'm Dave, and it's bedtime. But we're talking about
Should
this.
we skip ahead to Ocarina?
Yes, so Ocarina of Time.
Who should start?